In this video, we're going to be talking about the founder dependency profit leak or bottleneck, and most importantly, how to fix it. You're presumably watching this right now because you completed your profit leak detector assessment and it said, hey, your business probably needs you to survive. And that's okay. There's a fix for that, but I also want to let you know that it's something that's super common. As a matter of fact, I've been an entrepreneur in the service-based industry for 14 years now, and it wasn't until the last 3 years where I really understood how to get out of the day-to-day operations as the founder of a company. In one of my most recent portfolio companies that I've started up, we were doing $0 in revenue 3.5 years ago. We just got started, and today we're doing over $500,000 per month in revenue, so about $6 million is what we're on track to make this year. I will make over 7 figures of profit. The business is paying me 6 figures a month in profit currently. It's a really strong business. It's in a really cool niche, one that's not known for founders being able to get out of it, but I was able to get out of it thanks to the things that I'm going to share with you right now. One of the things that I talk about all the time in business is that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So if you pull on a chain really hard, it's going to snap at the weakest link. Now, your business is nothing more than a chain of different business links. So right here you see you have marketing, sales, fulfillment, back office, HR. You can fragment these however you want, but more or less these are the same links that every business chain has. Now, the important thing to realize is that at any given point, you have exactly one weakest link. All of them cannot be the weakest link by definition. There's only one. Now, your job as an entrepreneur, if you want to grow your business quickly with the least amount of work possible, is to put all of your effort into finding the weakest link and only working on that. Once that link is strengthened, then there will become another weakest link, and then you spend all your time working on that one, then you go to the next weakest link, and eventually over time, you'll build a business that's really strong. It's funny, there's this myth in business that in order to make more profit, you have to work more, and that's not the truth. You just have to work on the right things. You have to put the leverage at the right spots that are actually going to make a difference in your business and fix these profit leaks and the bottlenecks that you have hiding in it. One of the interesting things about entrepreneurship is that most entrepreneurs across the board start their business to get more money and more freedom. They want more of their time back. But ironically, most entrepreneurs end up with neither of those. They end up working more hours with less pay than what they would get if they were just working a 9-to-5 job. Statistically, an entrepreneur is more likely to pay their employees and their team more than they make as well, which I think is a shame because they take on a lot of risk, they make a lot of sacrifices and put in a lot of effort, and I think they should be compensated for that. And a lot of why this happens is due to the founder dependency profit leak or bottleneck. So going back to my company, 3.5 years ago, it was just me. I had an idea, I'm like, I'm gonna go pursue this. And so I had this business chain here and I fulfilled every spot along this chain. I was in every single link. Now the question is, how did I go from being involved in every single link of this business chain to being involved in almost none of them? As a matter of fact, about the only place I'm involved is this little teeny fraction of marketing and this little bit in like kind of back office, kind of HR role. But for the most part, the business runs itself. There's a lot of work that has to be done in this business. It's just my team that's doing the work. It's not me doing it. So how did I go from doing everything to doing nothing? Well, this is the process, and this is what you need to do if you want to work your way out of your business as well. Now, one thing I'll say, a lot of people start businesses because they want to be involved in something meaningful, and they love being in their business, and I think that's awesome. And I'm not saying that you have to step out of your business. I'm not saying you have to sell it or let other people run it by any means. But one of the things I can tell you is that it's really nice to at least have the option. Because with my company right now, the reasons I'm involved here and here is because I enjoy those functions. If I didn't enjoy those functions, I would not be doing them. I'm not involved in this process or this process at all because I hate doing those things. And so I built systems to pull myself out of that. And that's allowed me to have a lot more fulfillment working in my business. And now I have people that actually like to do that kind of work, doing those things and making great careers out of it. And so I really believe that regardless of how involved you want to be in your business, if you build a business that doesn't need you, you'll enjoy it a lot more than if you have one that is dependent on you every single day. Okay, so 3.5 years ago, I knew this was where I needed to focus my effort. It was in marketing because I had no one to talk to. And so all of my effort, going back to the chain is only as strong as its weakest link, was spent on marketing and figuring out how to get leads. After about 2 to 3 months, I did that. Then I needed to jump over, so I systematized that. And then I needed to jump over here and while this kept doing its thing and figure out how to sell these leads. I spent a couple months doing that. And then I jumped over here to figure out, okay, now that we actually have some closed deals, how do we fulfill these deals? And so I jumped over and did that. Now, every step of the way, what I would do is I would document the process that I was uncovering. Now, what do I mean by a process? It's quite simple. I'd create a Google Doc and I'd be like, okay, in order to make this function happen, or I'd break down each function within, marketing, within that marketing link, and I'd say, okay, this is how to manage an ad campaign. This is how to build a landing page. This is how to do this. And every time I'd do something related to this chain, I'd write down the steps just in a Google Doc, nothing fancy, defining how I did that or basically creating a recipe showing how someone could replicate what I had done, right? So I got my marketing functions all up and running and documented, had all my recipes. Then I moved to sales. I did the same thing there, got my recipes there. Then I moved to fulfillment. Well, now this is where things got interesting because up to this point, it was still just me. And this took about probably 3 months. Well, what happened is I realized that not only did I not want to do the sales anymore, but I had those processes documented well enough that I could hand those off to someone else. So then I jumped over here to HR and I ended up hiring some people to come and to fulfill this role. And because I had spent time documenting my process, they were able to come in and perform pretty well. Not as well as me. I mean, let's be honest, as the founder of the business, no one will probably be able to outsell you, but you shouldn't be able to outsell 3, 4, or 5 people, right? Just by virtue of how it works. So that's what I did. So I was stuck over here in fulfillment land. I needed people to sell, so I didn't have to dilute my attention. I just wanted to focus on this bottleneck. I hired some people, brought them in, they started selling, they started doing reasonably well, and then I was able to leave this function behind for a little bit, and then come here, did this, documented all the steps, wrote out the processes, and then I was able to get out of this as well. Then eventually I had back office issues because we had invoicing problems and things. I moved over here, I focused on those, I documented the process, this is what I did. Then I took one of these people, I said, hey, you're now in charge of the back office, follow these recipes. I made sure they could do it. And then before long, I was out of that as well. Then I jumped back to marketing because we now needed more leads to keep our sales team busy. So I spent some time there, and then I had to go back to sales because our close rates were low. And so it's just this constant ping-ponging between these different chain links in the business. So many entrepreneurs, they're like, I gotta fire here, and fire here, and fire here, fire here, fire here. I'm gonna put all my effort equally into putting out these fires, and that's the wrong approach because at the end of the day, your business will always have fires. There will always be some pressing thing that needs your attention. I promise you that. Whether you have the smallest company or a $1 trillion company, there are always fires to be put out. That's the nature of business. That's what the whole game is. And you get compensated for putting out those fires. But you want to do it in the right order. So you're not wasting your time and you're not driving yourself crazy. So you're not creating more work with less profit. We want more profit without more work. And we do that by solving the right constraint or the right bottleneck, the right profit leak at the correct time in the correct order. Because a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And if you spend your time working on a non-weak link in your business chain, you're wasting your energy. All right, so let's talk about specifically how did I document the processes. So let's take sales, for example. We'll do sales. So in sales, there are a few steps, right? We have inbound phone calls, we have website inquiries, we have social media, and these are some ways that clients can come in through marketing that we then have to sell to, right? And so what I would do is I take a step back and say, okay, I want to create a recipe for how to do the inbound sales. And so what I do is I noticed over time what I was doing every time I took an inbound call. So I'd say, okay, first thing, I start out by saying this step, right? Blah, blah, blah. Second thing I do is then I move over to our design brochure and I work on the vision board with them. Then the third thing I do is I do this, and then eventually I trial close, which is where I give them a price. Hey, if I could make this happen for this price on this day, this time, are you in? Yes or no? And then from there, I'd go to another part in the sales process, right? So I documented that. And what I did as part of this documentation process is I would list all the steps, and then I would fulfill the role of, in this case, taking inbound calls, but I could only follow the steps in my documentation. That's it. I pretended to be a robot, right? I'm not Keenan anymore. I'm just, employee ABC, first day on the job. And the only thing I know how to do is read and follow directions. And so I would go and I'd do this task by only following the instructions. And usually what I found is I missed a bunch of steps. So then I'd go and I'd fix the documentation, plug the steps back in, and then eventually I got pretty good at it. Once I got to the point where I was satisfied by my results from following the process, then it was time to put somebody else in my place. So I would take another team member, I'd say, hey, I need you to run this function for a while. Here's the process list. And what I would do is I would watch them as they ran the process. I'd watch them real time. After they do about 10 reps or so, if I like the results, then I would actually turn them loose to do like 10 reps without me and make sure the results are the same, right? What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to not only transfer this knowledge that I have and transfer the process, but I'm trying to make sure that when I'm not babysitting them, they can still do the process and have success. Once I get to that point, this is now off my to-do list, right? I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's no longer a bottleneck. So then I go to the next thing. So I'm like, okay, now we're going to talk about website inquiries. Well, I'm going to figure out what I do, right? So I have my 1, 2, 3 steps. These are all the things that I do, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to do those, maybe 10 times. And then I'm going to enter robot mode where I can only answer a website inquiry by following my own steps. I use this to see where there's holes in my instructions. Once I fix those holes, then I bring another team member in and say, okay, now you're in charge of website inquiries. I'm going to watch you do these. They do 10, and then eventually they do 10 without me once I'm satisfied with the results. If I still like the results when I'm no longer there, I've now crossed this off of my list. And then I go to the social media and I do the same thing. And eventually, I don't have a sales bottleneck anymore. But then I have a fulfillment bottleneck. So I go and do the same process here. Eventually, I don't have a fulfillment bottleneck anymore, and I'm no longer involved in the fulfillment process. The business no longer needs me to survive. Then I got back office functions to do that. That's fixed. Then I go to HR, that's fixed, and then marketing. And next thing you know, you have this business that you're only working in 3 to 5 hours a week that's now paying you over $1 million a year, which, as I might say, is like pretty nice for a part-time job. Highly recommend. Okay, let me give you one more example of how to remove yourself from the operations of your business so it can run without you, and how to fix this founder dependency profit leak. So one of the biggest pains in our asses here at the portfolio company was hiring people. And the reason is because I was the only one that knew how to do it for a long time. And it was very time intensive. So our statistical average is that we had to interview about 300 candidates per hire. And if we needed to hire 4 people, that means we had to do 1,200 candidates. It was a lot. I had to review all those applications. Well, another thing that was kind of unfortunate is out of those, only about 1 in 3 would stay. The rest would leave. And there's a variety of reasons why this happened. I'll try to keep this somewhat brief, but just know it's a big pain, because that means on average to get one person to stay, I had to review 900 applicants, and I had to go through and do first round interviews with everyone. For a while, first round interviews were a phone call. Just put PC for phone call. I remember like the breaking point for me is I had 55 phone calls in a 3-day period. I wanted to die. I'm like, I hate having the same conversation over and over. This is ridiculous. And so I started asking myself, how can I systematize this so I don't have to do these phone calls? If I could just get out of 55 phone calls in a 3-day period, how do I do that? Well, I realized that a lot of the phone calls, it was me answering the same information and asking the same questions. And so I had this idea, what if I created instead videos that answered the questions for the job candidate so I wouldn't have to worry about that? So I actually created 2 videos. We had a culture video, what's it like to work for the company? And then we had the job position video. And what I started doing is, a lot of our hiring is done through Indeed, we do some through LinkedIn, but you can ask optional questions. And what I started doing is I started asking the questions that I would ask these people in the phone interview. I started asking them on these pre-qualification questions on Indeed. And that way, I didn't have to dedicate 15 minutes of my life getting to know someone through a phone call. I just had to dedicate 30 seconds to skim through their answers and decide who was actually worth my time talking to. Now, one of the things that I wanted to make certain is that people were actually watching these videos. I have a belief when it comes to hiring is that if someone doesn't want to put in a few minutes to learn about my company, my team, and the job, that I don't want to interview them. I don't care how qualified they are. If they're too good to learn about my team, they're too good to work here, and I'm just not going to waste my time with them. So what I actually did is I had 2 videos on the page. I had the culture one, then I had the job position one. And in the job position video, there's a part about 3/4 through where I put flashing text on the screen. I said, the code word is Everest. Write this down for your interview. And I would flash that on the screen. And so what happened is, part of these pre-qualifying questions that I would ask, I said, hey, what's the code word? And it's really interesting because a lot of people would make up some answer like, oh, like beauty is the way, like just whatever random crappy thing ever, right? And that told me that they did not watch the video. And if they did watch the video, because it was bright flashing text and it was like on the screen for 10 seconds, you could not miss it, I knew they weren't paying attention, even if they did watch it, which to me is a pretty big red flag for this portfolio company, because if they can't invest enough energy to pay attention there, they're going to mess up a bunch of stuff at the business, and I don't like that. So I was able to significantly speed up this process and completely remove the need for phone calls for my business. Then what happened is we would go straight to the 2nd and 3rd round interviews, and then I would only do those. So this took the amount of people I had to talk to from like 55 to like 10. And that was very nice. I like that. But then it got to the point when we had to hire a lot of people that even that got to be too much. And so what I ended up doing, I said, okay, how can I basically repeat this process to make it better? Well, there's this software platform. Story Prompt is what we use. And it's actually not intended for interviewing. That's not what it's for. It's actually to collect video testimonials from your clients. And I'm like, hey, I've used Story Prompt for clients. What if I use Story Prompt and I ask them the interview questions, and then they get to record their video responses? And so I can do the second interview that way, and that will pull one more thing off of my plate. I said, okay, cool, let's try it. And I tried it, and it took some trial and error. About the first 2 times we tried to hire people with it, it was a mess. And then we figured out how to improve the process, and eventually we started getting a lot of candidates that would use Story Prompt. Then what happened is I could go through, and I now had the first interview basically completely off my plate. And I also trained my team, hey, look through these responses here, and this is what you're looking for. I created, just like this, I created the recipe for how to know if somebody's worth passing on to the second interview. Then I had them pass on to the story prompt interview. At that point, we asked them the questions we wanted for the second interview, and then I would watch the videos until I became very certain about what made a good candidate and what made a bad one. Then I documented all that, and then eventually I turned it over to my team and said, okay, I only want to be involved in the third interview. I want you guys to vet these people, send them the story prompt link and the email script, and then once they do story prompt, I want you to watch the videos and then just tell me which ones are worth my time, and we'll do that. We'll pass them on to the third interview. So I did that, and over time, we got the recipe for how to tell who we wanted to pass on. We documented all of it. And then eventually I said, okay, team, now I want you just to do the third interview without me. And so we streamlined this entire process. And once we proved that we could get good candidates through this process, then I was able to step away from it. This whole process took me about 2 months to do. It wasn't full-time work for 2 months by any means, but it took about 2 months of time to do. But now that it's done, I'm completely out of that process. And we now have a framework that we can use for filling other positions within the company. This has been really valuable for me. And in a world where everyone's using AI to BS their resumes and their applications, and even these questions are largely just AI slop, we found that putting them on video is really hard to fake. And you can tell really quickly who's good and who's not by how they show up on video, at least for my company. Now, I will say this may not be a good process for your business though, because you might not need people that are good on camera or that are articulate. You might need, a really good technician who can go and do the job and do it really well and do it quick, but they don't need to be, a salesperson or a spokesperson for the company or whatever. But for my specific needs, this was a great solution. So once again, as the CEO of this company, my job was to find this big problem, to find the solution and work myself out of that job so I could cross this off of my to-do list forever, and now my team owns that process. The cool thing is now if I need to hire 3-4 people a month, I now have no involvement whatsoever. I can go on to the next bottleneck and fix that. I hope this content has been super helpful for you. I hope you've been able to get some ideas on how you can fix your own profit leaks and your own bottlenecks within your business so you can pull yourself out of the day-to-day operations and build a healthier business that can survive without you. Whether or not you choose to stay in your business long-term, this will only improve your business. I promise you that. I want to tell you about something that I think will completely change the game for you as a business owner. It's called the 2X Profit Audit. Right here in my hands are the results of a recent 2X Profit Audit we did for a client where we were able to figure out how they could more than double their profit and add an extra $700,000 per year as the business owner into their pocket while working less. We do that by identifying strategic changes that they can make, like this hiring example. So what exactly is the 2X Profit Audit? Well, it's where my team and I take a deep dive into your business and we analyze each link in your business chain. We find the bottlenecks and the profit leaks that are keeping your business stuck, and we figure out the best way to fix those profit leaks with the least amount of effort. Once we complete the audit, we'll meet with you one-to-one over a Zoom call where we report back the results of the audit. We tell you where the broken links in your business chain are and how we'd go about fixing them if we were in your shoes with your skill set, your team, and your resources. And when we create our recommendations, we're looking for ways that we can 2x your profit in the next 12 months or less. If that sounds like something that you would like to do, the next step is to scroll down and click the button below that says apply for my 2X Profit Audit, fill out the questions, and my team will look through it and see if you're a good fit. If you are a good fit, we'll let you know within 24 hours so we can set up a time to jump on a call together, have any questions that we might still have about your business answered. We'll then go do the audit and then we'll report back to you. So once again, if that's something that you'd like to do, that's the next step. Scroll down and click the button below.